Is that music or a train?
That's a train, and it literally started as soon as I hit go live. We'll give it like 1 more minute, then we'll get started. All right. Let me get my pad open here and we'll get started. All right. Hey, everybody. Thank y'all for joining us. This week, of course, it's Michelle and I, but this week we are so honored to have Bishop Dr. Anthony Chavers with us. We are incredibly grateful for you joining us, Bishop. If you attended Georgia Southern or you're familiar with anything in Bullitt County, I'm pretty sure you've heard of Agape Worship Center. Phenomenal. Bishop is the founder of Agape, and it's now he passed the hams on to Pastor Donald. But a phenomenal leader, a giant in the gospel, in my opinion. So we are so grateful to have you, Bishop. Thank you for being with us.
I am so glad to be here with you to share on this great virtual Bible study. I'm excited about it.
Yay.
Awesome. So, Michelle, if you don't mind, would you give us just like a rewind of last week's lesson, and then we'll jump into this week's lesson?
Sure. If you joined us last week or saw the replay, I'm sure you realized that it was an interesting text to study and an interesting text to talk about. I'm just so thankful here and that, everyone that joined us kind of identified with us in one way or another. And so last week we talked about the thin line between love and hate, coming from Romans chapter 12. And even though the verses that we talked about was verses 9 through 19, you really need to go back and digest the entire chapter. Because it's just such a interesting work. It's an interesting text. And I think that, as we always say, I think it's one of the texts in the Bible that really calls us higher and closer to God and living in a way that is reflective of the way that Christ will have us to live. So I'm encouraged by that. I am having a great week this week, thankfully. I dealt with myself and my convictions last week. So I'm blessed to be here this week and excited to hear from Bishop Chavers.
All right, so this week we're going to be studying from Luke chapter 10, starting at verse 25, and we're going to go all the way down to verse 37. So we're going to kind of block it off with verses 25 through 29. We'll talk about it a little bit, and then we'll expand on the latter part with the parable. So this is the story of the Good Samaritan. So it starts off with a lawyer asking Jesus a question. He asks him, he says, "What should I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus, like a good therapist or a good counselor, right? He didn't just give him an answer. He asks him a question that leads him to the answer, right? So he then says, "Well, what does the law say? Like, when you read it, what is your reading of it?" And he says, the answer is, "You should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus said, "You have answered rightly. Do this and you will live." But he, the lawyer, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Right? So before we get to the second part, the theme or the topic for this week is these two, right? Because these are two things that Jesus has told us that is extremely important, right? All the commandments hang off these two things. And so, in my opinion, this is the loving God with all your heart, with everything in you. It's like a prerequisite to loving your neighbor, right? So if you're taking college courses, sometimes, to get to class B, you first got to pass class A, right? So in order, before we can love our neighbor, the first part is loving God with everything. And that it is, I think that's heavy weighted in the sense of we'll say, well, no, well, God, I'll give you everything. You know, in all honesty, you know, we really wouldn't give God a ham sandwich. You know, so it sounds good to say, I love you, God, with everything. A lot of us, you know, don't know what it feels like to love somebody with everything in us, right? And I'll kick this out to Bishop to kind of expound on it, and then Michelle to come in after him.
Okay.
Wow. Well, this is a heavy text that you picked. I think a lot of times when we read this text, we handle it lightly because we jump to the part 2 of the section, but don't really eat the meat out of the first section of it. So when the lawyer posed this question to the teacher, which is Jesus, he's wanting, how do we obtain eternal life? So what the Lord asked him is, as you stated earlier, to tell me what the law says. Now you got to understand, in their culture, they had to know the law from memory. They had to recite it from memory. It was something that was taught to them when they were born, to remember the laws. And I think the thing that hurts the church today is that we don't require our people to remember certain portions of doctrine that will hold us to our faith when hard times come, or when questions like these are posed. So the young man gave Jesus the best answer that he could. You should love the Lord God with all your heart. See, that was part of the law of Moses. You got to love the Lord God with all of your heart. And can't you see the excitement in him? He was so excited when he made that statement, love the Lord God with all your heart. And then this is the beautiful part. Not only should you love the Lord God with all your heart, he went on to say, and with your soul, and with your strength, and with your mind. So he's saying your total being, everything about you should love God. And I think that's a missing component in today's society. We don't love God with our whole heart. And it's only because of a misconception about love. I might be going a little too far off, but I'm going to say
No.
It's only because
just go. It's fine.
Only because of a misconception about love. When we look at love from the standpoint, that essential standpoint of making me feel good, making me feel wonderful about myself. But love is brutal. And I've said this so many times. Love is bloody. Love takes a lot. Love, the whole thing of love, it encompasses so much. But we've just taken a small part of love and then apply it. So here it is. He says, you got to love him with everything you have. You got to love him with your soul. You got to love him with your mind. You got to love him with your strength. So he says, hey, we are tripart beings. So we got to love God with every area of our life. We got to love him in our faults. We got to love him in our heart and our soul. We got to love him with our strength. Everything about us is about the love of God. And then the final one, and I got to love my neighbor. So he thought he did something wonderful when he made that statement. And love my neighbor. And love my neighbor. And Jesus said, you answered correctly. Oh, God, you did a great thing. You know the law. You know what's happening. So we together on this. We are together on this. So I think that the Lord is really pushing the church during this pandemic back to that moment of reflecting on how well do we really love the Lord, and how well do we really love our neighbor.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if there's anything else to add. What I will point out, something that Bishop talked about is the lawyer's knowledge of the law. I think it's important for us to point that out because, and even, we may have some lawyers who are joining us here live, to be a lawyer, even in this biblical context, you have to have a certain kind of mind, the way that you understand language and the way that you understand situations and circumstances. You do that in a certain way. And so the way that this lawyer, whose identity we don't really know, the way that he answers is very much the textbook answer, just like the bishop said. And I think what happens towards the end of this, when Jesus poses the question back, it's almost like Jesus is calling him to say, okay, yeah, that answer was textbook. Now tell me the real answer. You know, what does it really mean to love your neighbor? And again, what Bishop said, you know, the lawyer at this point in the text, he was looking for validation, right? He was looking for a pat on the back. And you know, I would dare to say that many of us, starting with myself, you know, when we are in conversations about the faith, or we're talking about God, or we are, you know, trying to have conversations around Christ, we often say stuff, right? And we almost beat our chest like, oh, I'm so righteous, right? I know this and I know that, and I can quote these scriptures and I can tell you this, but do you love the Lord? Abandon, with reckless abandon. I love, Bishop, that you talked about love being brutal, because I think we sensationalize what love is, and we miss out on the fact that it's a multi-dimensional action, right? So it's not just the good, but it's the bad, and it's loving something outside of ourselves so much that we would be willing to sacrifice ourselves to do it right. So that's all that I have to say about that.
Ooh, that was good. What you said? Multi-what?
Multi-dimensional. Listen, Bishop, I be asking for a cash app on Bible studies. Multi-dimensional.
You know, we're all in quarantine. I only interact with my husband, so I'm just happy to be able to, you know, interact with you guys, even if it is virtually.
Something I wanted to bring up was, and in my reading, was that one of the mistakes of the lawyer is assuming that he's already accomplished loving God with all his heart, right? Because he jumps right to and who is my neighbor, right?
Yeah.
As though number one does not automatically take care of number two, right? So if you love God with all your heart, then you already know who your neighbor is. You already love your neighbor as yourself. And so I think that's something that I just really want to highlight, as far as just saying, you know, again, going back to the very beginning, prerequisite. If you love God with all your heart, number two is going to take care of itself, right? So Jesus goes on and he, as he does, breaks it down in a parable so you can understand it. Says, okay, let me give you an illustration. Let me give you a story. So Jesus answered and said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and I'm reading it so I don't leave anything out. Michelle, we got Bishop on here. I don't want to miss anything.
Right.
And fell among thieves who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. And then by chance, there were two individuals that come along. There's a priest and a Levite, and they both look and they pass by on the other side. But then there's a certain Samaritan. As he journeyed, he came, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him and he bandaged his wounds, poured on oil and wine, and he set him on his own animal, brought him into an inn, and took care of him. And on the next day when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, giving them to the innkeeper, and said to them, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I come again, I will repay you. So the significance of this is, you know, when we hear Good Samaritan, we affiliate with that being a good thing, right? But during this time, Samaritans and Jews was like religiously and racially, we don't like each other, right? So we would naturally, I would believe, I'm the lawyer, I would assume that the Levite and the priest, they're going to do the good thing. They're going to be my neighbor and take care of the wounded and be compassionate. But they pass by on the other side. Now, there are reasons as to why people believe why they could have passed by. But I definitely want to hear from Bishop just a deeper understanding as from what you take from the second half of it.
Well, you have to understand the position of the priest and the Levite. They're walking on this dangerous road and they could be robbed. They saw this man lying there, but probably in the back of their mind, we don't know, but I'm just saying. probably in the back of their mind, they're saying this could be an ambush. So we're going to move on. We're not even going to check it out. We're going to keep moving. We don't, it doesn't even matter. I know that appears to be blood on you, but I'm not going to check it out to see. I'm moving on. I have other things to do. I don't have time to deal with this. I must go. And it's much like sometimes when we see people on the street with panhandling or whatever with the little cup and stuff, and we walk right by them and, you know, can I get $1? Not today, doc, and keep trucking. You know, we're not paying them any attention. We're just going on about our business because number one, we're looking out for ourselves. And we're number two, we're trying to make sure we are protected and safe. So from that standpoint, when we look at this, this example that Jesus gave, and it's a powerful example because you see the two that Jesus point out. He picked a priest and a Levite, high officials in the synagogue. He picked out church people, people who are high officials in the synagogue. He says, now these officials who supposed to have sympathy in them, these people who supposed to be nice and supposed to be kind, these people who teach the law, these people who tell everybody to be kind to your brothers and sisters are the main ones looking out for themselves, trying to protect themselves, and walking right by this person that's side the street. But along comes a half-breed, a person who don't supposed to even be a part of this. He's not a part of this. He's not a part of the promise. He's not a son of the promise. He is a Samaritan coming along, but he treats this person, this unknown person, with great hospitality, and then made sure that he was taken care of days later. And if there's a bill left when he get healed, I'll come back and I'll take care of that too. And that's something that the Lord is really trying to push in this text. I want you to see that your status does not make you a great person.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Go ahead, Shay. You ready?
I mean, there's really nothing else to say. I mean, wow. I think I'll say personally, you know, having recently obviously studied this text, and you know, my pastor even taught this text last week, just learning this story, hearing this story as an adult, it makes me appreciate it so much, because so much of even what you shared, Bishop, about, you know, the victim of this crime being, you know, in this place where these people, the priest, right? I know if I'm a victim, I would expect surely the church folks to help me out, but they pass me by. And then to have someone that I know is you would almost guarantee that person would pass me by, for them to stop. It just says so much. And I again, you know, you don't get that context in Sunday school, you know, when you're a kid. So I just appreciate it so much more as an adult, because it reiterates the fact that so many claim the mantle of Christ, right? They claim the label of Christian, but their actions don't show it. And if we were to go back to the beginning of where we started in our study, I believe that is the message, right? Is if you're gonna say you are, then be. Don't just say it. I need you to live it. I need you to act it. And what I love is that in this parable, Christ shows us that, like you said, Bishop, label doesn't matter. Your status doesn't matter. Who you say you are doesn't matter. Who are you? Who are you showing yourself to be, right? I could go out into the street. I could wear all the Christian shirts. I mean, I have one on right now, but if my life does not reflect the inner work, if my life does not show that something is moving inside of me, that the Spirit lives in me, then what good is it?
One more interesting point that I just glanced at the text again. He said a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. So now that can give us an indication. You Levite and you priest, you overlooked your brother.
Yes.
Right.
You overlooked your brother, and here's a stranger. He's not of the tribe of Israel, but he's taking care of your quote unquote
Yes.
brother. And we have to look at that when we are saying, this is my brother, this is my sister. But will you take care of me when I'm in dire
Mhm.
need? Will you be there for me when I need you the most? This is my good friend. Okay, I hear what you're saying. But when my back is against the wall, are you going to be there with me? I just don't need you sometime for prayer only. I need some of your substance. I need some of the of your favor, for lack of a better phrase. I need you to help me open some doors because my back is against the wall. I'm your neighbor. I'm your friend. I'm your brother. I'm your sister. So can you help me? Can you help me, or are you going to walk right past me because you are afraid that I might be an ambush?
Yeah, I think pointing out something that Michelle said, this is more
Mhm.
impactful as an adult because I think we can
Yes.
identify with being down on your luck or seeing someone down on their luck, and the people you think that are going to come to your rescue, and they don't come, right? And then when it
Mm-hmm.
comes from a stranger, last week we talked about, Bishop, how oftentimes we will run on mission trips, right? We'll go cross seas and do this and that, but we will forget the person that's right next door to us. We'll forget the children that are starving in our own backyards. And oftentimes we are like the Levite and the priest. We go right past the projects. We go right past anybody that's low income, and we don't think twice that this is my brother, this is my sister, and they need my help, right? Like you said, a lot of times it's not just I need a pat on the back, right? I need some help getting this bill paid.
Yes.
But if I am your brother and your sister, and I think it's especially in the climate that we're in, right, with our white evangelicals, right? If I am
Oh,
your
yeah.
brother and your sister, then treat me like I am your brother or your sister.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the appropriate text for this season, for this climate. And I'm glad you brought up that social piece because if you're my brother or my sister, then you are going to look out for my well-being as well. You're not going to treat me like second class, low rate citizens. And I might probably should have used another phrase or term, but treat me as who I am. I am somebody. I am important. I am knowledgeable. I do have rights. So respect me for who I am and don't judge me off of pretenses. Don't judge me and treat me as if I'm some stranger who's setting up an ambush to destroy you or to annihilate you. I read an article not too long ago where this African American male, he's a hip hop gospel Christian hip hop artist, y'all know. And so he wrote this article about having sometimes to walk across the street so that the persons of another nationality won't have to be afraid. And the horrible thing is that all of this fear that is in the land, all of this stuff, and it separates brothers and sisters from each other. That's not what Jesus is talking about here. Jesus is
Right.
saying, no, the picture is much bigger than this. Can you pull your walls down? Can you pull your attitude down? Can you pull your thoughts down? I don't care what your grandmama taught you or your granddaddy taught you about this person or that one. That has to be annihilated. I want you to pull those walls down so that you can be a help to your brother or to your sister who's in need. And what I love about the text is as we get the latter part of it and Jesus began to talk to him about all of this, who is my neighbor? He's asked another question. Well, what you think about this? Jesus always asks questions. So what you think about this? What can you do this? Who's he looks at the Levite, he looks at the priest. Which one is going to get the prize? The
Mhm.
Samaritan. Why? Because he was good to that person. So who is your neighbor? Those that I help who are in need, those are my neighbors. Not just the person across the street, no, but that person who needs me the most, that's my neighbor.
I love it. I think there was another point about, you know, us in this season of social and civil and every kind of unrest you can really think of. You know, what I love most is that we are seeing it's something different about this time. And I know lots of people have said that, and that's been my prayer, that God, you make it different this time. That we start to tear down the walls, like Bishop said. We tear down our own walls, our personal walls, right? Because we have our own biases. We have our own biases against people who look just like us. You know, we
Yes.
carry them around. We carry around stereotypes. And in order for us to really love, we have to let that stuff go and allow people to prove themselves to us before we judge them. Because so often we miss out on God moments because we're so wrapped up in what we think somebody is going to do or what we believe they might do, and we never just let them be who they are to prove us wrong or to prove us right. We just need to be better. We need to be better.
Yes. And let's go back to the beginning when he said he came down from Jerusalem again. Let's look at that again. Their brother. Until we learn how to be brothers and sisters again,
Yeah,
change really won't ever come
yeah,
until we love each other again, until we pull those communities back together. The greatest community that ever existed in America was African American communities, where everybody was responsible for everybody's children. Everybody knew where everyone was. Until we get that
yes,
type of camaraderie back into our culture and into our society, we can knock down walls. Until we tear down those barriers that have been placed up
yeah,
between us, then change really won't come until we are together as a united front. And I'm not just talking about out on the street marching and protesting. I'm talking about every
everywhere.
day of our lives. We
Yeah.
have to consciously put in our mind, that's my brother, that's my sister. I need to make sure they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
And once that start happening, then we can move into that other phase, as Jesus called it, into the ministry of reconciliation.
I think something that you both highlighted there is selflessness, right? We
Yes.
lack that because a lot of our, you go back to the Levite and the priest is, I might get ambushed. This could be, something's going to happen to me. It's all about me, and not how can I help this person, or maybe I don't know how to administer aid. It's all selfish, and so we, like you were saying, Bishop, we have to get back to a place and during those times where it wasn't just about me, it was about everybody. It was not just my kids, it's
Yes.
your kids too. It's not just me, it's you as well. And so going back to a lesson maybe 2 weeks ago when we talked about what love is, right? Is it's
Mm.
not selfish. And until we put self aside and we can learn to put somebody before ourselves, I think we're all gonna struggle. And like you said, it's not just a white on black thing. It's within our own racial barriers. Like it's all about me. I gotta get me in mind. And I think a lot of times that's what's being perpetuated to us, right? Through media, through music. I gotta get me, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna get me out the mud. You gotta get yours. And so I think that's we battle. I know Bishop, you taught a Bible study when we talked about um, the Prince of the Airs, right? He
Oh,
controls the
yeah.
media and what we hear and what we see. And so that's what we're constantly hearing. I got to take care of me. How do we combat that in a time where that's always being pushed at us?
Oh, you asked a hard question,
Mm.
but I will attempt to answer. The first thing that we need to do is take self examination. Am I this important? If I am
Mm.
a Jesus Christ, then I must be that example of Jesus Christ. I have to deny me. And denying me doesn't simply mean I take everything out of my house and just give to everyone. What it does mean is that I take off this whole
Yeah.
notion of me, protect what's mine, and look at the bigger picture. if I protect all of this, I am protecting me. If I teach and train all of these about what true love is and how God gave of his own son to show selflessness, how he gave up his son so that we may have a right to the tree of life. If we take these examples, I think that will start turning us back towards our brother and our sister. And then we need to hear it preached in our churches. We need to hear that type of message again. We need to hear that village message again. We don't hear that stuff anymore. We don't hear anything about let's take care of the village anymore. It's all about us and what can we get in our pockets and how well we should live. No, we need to hear that message that we are here for you, brothers and sisters. And once we start hearing that stuff, it'll start bringing down those arguments that's constantly coming in our head of constantly trying to protect ourselves and just only looking out for ourselves. So once we start hearing that again, that village message, and when we start hearing about the message of Jesus Christ and his whole purpose of being here on the earth, then I think, and I know, we'll start moving in that direction of being a village again.
Yeah. Any comments, Michelle? She's freezing up on.
Yes, she freezing up.
I was just gonna say that my internet is being weird, so I don't know if you guys can hear me, but
Yeah, we're send you some
I was
Georgia
just gonna say
internet.
that please do, because it's real funky over here. But I was gonna say, look, I've been praying under my breath the whole time, like, Lord, please, just 30 more minutes. But as you were talking about the village, it just reminded me of the sentiments that my grandparents kind of instilled in us about helping each other out and being there for each other. And I think that we've gotten so far away from that village mentality that it's no wonder that our resources are exhausted and that we are exhausted because we're not helping each other. I'm not saying that if somebody needs a $10,000 loan that I should go to them and ask for it, or that they should come to me and ask for it. But why can't we depend on each other to fill in the gaps? We so often we pray to God for things, and Lord knows he is definitely a gap filler and a way maker. But I wonder sometimes what would help, or if it would help us, if we realized we should be able to go to our neighbor, and how we could shift our communities if we could rely on each other to hold our children accountable, to tutor our children, to help us get new jobs. One thing that I've learned the older I get is that God has given me resource and access. So it's not for me to hoard. Me being a good steward means that I am actively using that resource and that access to help my brothers and sisters, to pull them forward and to share. And we've gotten in the habit of charging people for things that we should be able to give freely. And that really bothers me. So I love, Bishop, that you brought up the village, because I truly believe that can really shift some things around for us.
I think, Michelle, you hit on something that's important, that this does not mean running after every need that we see, right? Because the Good Samaritan did not build a hospital, right?
Right.
He took care of the need of the person that was in front of them. So we have to use wisdom in everything that we do. So that does not give anybody the opportunity to leech right off of you, right? But I think that goes back to kind of what Bishop was saying is sound teaching, right? Knowing the fine line between helping and overdoing. But I think again, Bishop, that is a resounding message, is the village. Because even while Michelle was talking, I was like, I just can't even get it out of my head. Like, that's so true. We have to, and it's one person at a time. So when we leave this Bible study, I'm going to go and examine myself and be like, how can I contribute to my village? What can I do better? what can I do to help? Like you say, Michelle, my resources to help somebody else, right? It's not charging for every piece of thing that I know, right? It's reaching back and helping the youth in your community. Is looking at those kids who everybody else has looked over and say, you know what, I have something that I can offer to them. We all have something that we can offer. And just what Bishop was saying earlier, just not seeing yourself as this person on this pedestal, right? But this is I see me and you. Last week we talked about we are image bearers of God. I have to be able to look at you, Michelle, and see you and me. But I think oftentimes when we look at each other, we think, well, I ain't got that issue, I ain't got that problem, but we got other issues and problems, right? But we try to differentiate and make one better or worse than the other. Mm-hmm. Just because I'm not flawed in the area that you're flawed in, it does not make me any better.
Yes.
That's so true. I think that's where the big problem is. We're highlighting sins, so to speak. And we have to realize that all of us are on the same playing board with Jesus. He does not look at the big I or the little you. He looks at you as an individual. And he's compelling us to go out there and to help our brothers and to help our sisters. And don't look for someone to pat you on the back and say, oh, you fed 10 people today. Oh, isn't that so? We're going to put your name in the newspaper. No. Yeah. What about those children? Because sometimes we can't do too much for those older ones. But like you were stating earlier, we can start changing our village by imparting into those young people and giving them the concept and letting them buy into the concept of the village. Let's look out for each other. We're here to stand for each other. So teaching in that aspect and helping in that aspect and giving back in that aspect will make a big difference in our community.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The last thing that I really want to highlight is what Jesus tells them to go and do likewise, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times we get all this good information and then we just sit on it. So what's important that when all this is over, that we go and we do likewise. We have to be doers, right? It sounds good, yeah, we got to do this and that, but what are you actually going to do? Right? What fruit are you bearing? That's part of what you're doing. What are you doing? And I think a lot of times we go to church, prior to the pandemic, we're going every Sunday, we go religiously and we're just taking in information, but we're not actually being doers of it. And I'm not saying that it's easy or it's simple, but you have to make the effort. You have to put it in your mind that this is what I'm going to do. Like you said earlier, you have to be intentional about it, right? Like I said, I'm going to be intentional about how can I be a resource to my village. What am I going to go and do when this conversation is over?
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about Jesus, every time he gave some sort of example or parable, at the end of most of them, that famous word, go, is always attached to it. Because Jesus is simply saying, we're not just about the knowledge, we're about the action. And it's quite ironic you mentioned that people love information. I mentioned that in my sermon on Sunday, that we have a lot of people who are information junkies. They just gather information, but don't apply any of it. Jesus wants us to go, put this into practice, start doing this, start making it happen. Even if it's just your cousin, or whoever it is, or the little boy across the street, whoever it is, let's make it happen, put it into action. And once we start putting these things into action, then we will see the rewards of Jesus Christ in our very life. We will see the favor of God rest and reign on us like never before. Compel us. Go.
Go.
Yes, that was a great point you pulled
out. Last thing I want to say about what you just said, Bishop, is once we do these things, then we'll see the favor of God to pour out on us, right? If we take care of God's business, if we do what we're supposed to do, God is going to take care of us. Yes. He's going to do it. And I think a lot of times we get so caught up in our resources that we forget that he is the source. And that if you're out here supplying resources, He has to refill you. He has to come back and build you up so you can go out and do more.
Yes. That's the whole point. He gives us more so we can do more. And I mean, that's the whole point. We know you can't be everywhere at the same time. That's why we have quote unquote little disciples that we train so that they can carry the message on for us and keep this moving forward. Uh, because the more God gives us, the more He wants us to give back to the people and help the people. My whole ministry is to help the people. When I was called into ministry over 30 years ago, these are the words He said: "Go ye therefore into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." Now you got to look at the word that He used: go, 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 go. Everything that I download into you, you give it to them. Every revelation that I give to you, you give it to them. When you sit here in your study and you study for hours and you have all this information, I don't want you to hold it. You empty yourself out and give it to the people. And as you give it out to them, I'll give you more. I'll keep filling you up. The more you give out, the more I'll give back to you. So that's what God wants us to do in this day and age. We got to go take care of our neighbors, and God gonna take care of us.
Absolutely. Michelle, anything you want to say before we wrap up?
No, thank you to Bishop. I think his last point is like spot on with what we talked about last week. Especially in Romans 12 with the parts of the body. When we think about Christ's body, right, and our position and our role as members of the collective church, the global church, we each have an assignment. And if we could get that assignment, if we could just do our little assignment and every person did theirs, there would be no need in the land. So I just want to reiterate, the fact that we have a call to do. I don't think that's possible of us. He's asking us to go though, and so we need to be prepared to go. So thank you so much, Bishop, for joining us.
I am so glad to be with you. Hope to do this again. This was exciting for me.
No, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Quite ironic.
It means a lot that you thought enough of us to. You could have been doing anything else, and you came and you joined us. We really do appreciate it. I think, like you said, your last point, you and Michelle both, is spot on. We have to go and do. We have to go and be what we want to see in the world, right? Like Michelle was saying, if I take care of my lane, right, maybe it'll inspire somebody else to do what they're supposed to be doing. So we have to go and do, and love those who don't look like us, those who may even be afraid of. But more so, you should be willing to do for those you know, right? Your brothers and your sisters. So again, thank you so much, Bishop. We really do appreciate it. Thank you all who's still hanging in here with us. On Friday, don't forget, we have our Faith First prayer call at 12 noon. And we will be back next Wednesday with our next virtual Bible study. As always, I love you, Michelle. Thank you, Bishop.
God bless you.
And y'all have a great night.
Night, night.